When we talk data, do you believe schools have a lot of it?
Absolutely. Most schools probably range in the order of tens to hundreds of terabytes. Of course, every school is very different. Some schools have a lot less, some schools have a lot more. So in essence, it's probably not so much about how much data they've got, it's about how they use that data and what sort of insights they draw from the data. What we find is there's pockets of what we call dark data as well. So think about your old systems, paper-based, forms-based, which haven't yet been digitised. So there's quite a bit of that sort of information that hasn't even been captured. What we're finding is the data universe is just massively exploding. We're going to see in the next 2 years an exponential growth in data. And we're expecting to see somewhere in the vicinity of about 40 zettabytes of data, and that is quite significant in terms of the sort of growth in the next 2 years. If we're thinking in practical terms, what does that really mean? Mm-hmm. If you were to run an Ultra HD video of 8K for the next 320 million years,
oh, wow.
It's that much data. It's huge. It's really about what we've got in terms of within a school environment, what data we've got, and how we're going to go about harnessing that information and asking the right questions of the information.
Well, I guess to your point there, do you believe that schools are making good use of the data that they have available to them?
Currently not, unfortunately, and it's not so much just a dig at education and schools, because it's across all industry. And most of the use of the data today, realistically, we're probably drawing insights from less than 1% of the data that an organisation has. So if you think about all the data sources within a school, it's a huge opportunity. If you think about all the relevant data points, not just the traditional data points either, so immediately schools will think about their student information system. That's not the only data source. There's a wealth of other data sources available around students and why they're performing the way they are, and how do we potentially support and improve the performance of students. So absolutely there's opportunities to improve in that space.
Are there any schools out there or any districts that you think have put data to good use?
Yeah, there's a really intriguing story, one that comes out of North America, and it's in the Tacoma district. So Tacoma district is in Washington. It's a collection of 5 high schools, and collectively there's about 30,000 students in that district. Unfortunately, that district has had a really bad rap in terms of the graduation rates for their students, and there was a high incidence of stereotyping children. Mm-hmm. And immediately you'd understand if there was a student from Tacoma State, immediately they were labelled as poor, underperforming, potential for dropout. Mm. And the statistics kind of backed it up, because there was about 55% of the students that were actually going through to graduate, and that was back in 2010. So the school very quickly realised we really need to do something about this, and it was through the visionary leadership of principals, administrators, teachers, but also the community and parents rallying around the students and the schools. So they approached Microsoft, and we decided to embark on a machine learning or predictive analytics project to try and estimate or predict which students had a higher propensity to potentially drop out and potentially bring in lower grades. So we embarked on the project, and after a number of engagements and workshops with the school, we developed a solution which was it was predominantly built on data factory, data lakes, and Azure machine learning. And Azure machine learning was the element of advanced analytics, which allows us to predict that future probability of a student dropping out. So engaging the school, they implemented it, and what was different about this project from any other one that we had done in the past was bringing in other data sources, understanding nutrition data about a student, understanding their background, looking at the socioeconomic data that was present, looking at social information about a student, really getting a whole of picture about that particular student, and also rallying school, the pastoral care, the community, the parents also, around how do we intervene early when we see a student potentially going off the rails, and how do we support them in the most optimal way. At the end, basically the result was the result of 55% as a graduation rate actually elevated above the national average up to 82.5%. And that was just a phenomenal win for that school. To bring that back home, a lot of people will say, well, that's in North America. In Australia, just a couple of years ago, we saw 1 in 4 students not reach graduation. So it is very much a story that's relevant in North America just as much as it is in Australia.
And data, I mean, just to pick on a bit of the controversy around data, and I think it's amazing what you can do and the impact it can have. But I guess on the controversial side of the fence, some people argue that data can be skewed based on the person asking the question. What's your take on that, and how can you minimize that?
That is a fair call. Traditionally, if you look at schools or any organisation for that matter, it's really been, we're very much dependent on data specialists, data analysts who go away and develop reports based on what a business manager would require. So there's that potential for some loss of translation, through translation, what the requirements are from the business manager or the audience who's requesting the report. So absolutely, that, I guess, putting that control over to a data analyst who's going to go away and do the analytics and reporting is a potential. There's also that's the human element. Mm-hmm. The machine element is the machine itself is inherently built in with biases. So if we think about machine learning, it's built on algorithms to detect patterns, and there's weightings that are assigned. Those weightings are something that's assigned by a human. Now, the machine will ultimately learn by the mistakes, by the output, and the more accurate it becomes, you can reinforce the weighting. So the machine gets smarter over time, and the more data you put through. So that in itself, the machine also has biases, but with enough data and enough training, the machine will actually become more intelligent and more accurate with its predictions over time.
What are some suggestions or recommendations around overcoming that perception of data being able to be manipulated at a school?
So a couple of different ways. We spoke briefly about both bias through the machine and also human bias. Let's talk about the human bias first. So really it's about taking tools and technologies and making them available to the masses, the people who are actually looking for those data insights, rather than having data reporting and analytics being done behind closed doors or in a black box. So providing tools such as Power BI, which have highly intuitive, almost self-service type data insight visualization tools, and putting those in the hands of those people who are looking to make those business decisions and need those insights. So you're cutting out that middleman. From a machine perspective, it's all about putting enough data through that machine learning so you increase the accuracy of those predictions. So it's about cloud, it's about big data, and it's about pumping through a lot of data through that machine learning to achieve high levels of accuracy and prediction.
And say I'm an IT administrator at a school or a diocese or department. How do I really communicate the business value of having an analytics solution or insights on data to someone like my principal or deputy or whoever the head of department might be? So
fundamentally, if we think about data and technology for that matter, and the impact it's had on social communities and the progress of society, education has really been lagging behind for quite some time. So there's quite a bit of ground to make up, firstly. So selling it to a lot of those people who are making the decisions, whether it be your principals, your teachers, your administrators, it's somewhat of an easier sell. It's about empowering them to make the best decisions for the school, for the students, and the future success and the learning outcomes for those students. If you think about some of the statistics, really it's about some of the successes you can drive through the school: higher grades, lower attrition rates, higher levels of graduation. So these are all things that the governments will be looking very closely at when they're assessing particular schools and looking how they fund across the schools. Mm-hmm. So for schools, it's absolutely important.
And do you believe that, in order to set yourself up for success, and keen to get your thoughts on what some of those tips and tricks are around analytics solutions, but do you believe that you have to be an IT administrator with a high degree of technical know-how, particularly around things like Excel and Power BI, or is there enough out there, enough training, enough support that you think anyone can really have a go?
Thankfully not anymore. So if we think back to the way it used to be with institutional reporting, it was in the hands of the very few that were privileged enough to be able to understand complex queries, understand technologies, databases, reporting technologies and tools. Today, very intuitive tools. You can really put it in anyone's hands almost and start asking very simple questions of the reporting tool to generate very meaningful dashboards and reports for you. So I think that the time is absolutely right, and it's really about having people use the tool and become familiar with it. They're so intuitive to use, and we have a lot of resources available to support those people.
So then what are some good things to know for someone who's embarking on that journey, who'd like to investigate it a bit further? What are some recommendations of yours?
So first place I would start is looking at some of the freely available resources on the internet. We've got Power BI free version, which is currently available. Very easy to load on your machine, runs across platform, cross devices, and you could really point to any of your existing data sources. It could be even an Excel spreadsheet that you're familiar with, and start asking questions and see what sort of insights. It may generate insights that you've never even done or seen correlations in the data and relationships in the data that you've never discovered before in the past, which will be really surprising. In addition to that, we've also got free trials and subscriptions for Azure. So if you're looking at the back-end systems for more from analytics and machine learning, we've got Azure credits you can apply for. If you do a quick search on the internet, you'll see that that is also available. We also have free training, guided learning, Power BI. Just look up those 4 words on your favourite search engine, and you'll immediately find a whole repository of Power BI training, all the way from the novice through to the seasoned expert. Otherwise, there's also some of the more traditional types of training resources, like Virtual Academy as well.
Sure. And so what would you suggest is the coolest feature or most used feature within the analytics suite that Microsoft has to offer?
I really like Power BI. It's where you essentially connect with the end user. It's where I, as a consultant out in the field, as an advisor to my customers, I can generate very easy to view, visually very rich reports. And the features that I like in particular is 3 features. Getting the data, literally you can point to any data source. It could be on my local machine, it could be on a network, it could be even a data resource out on the internet. And so the get data option is the first one. Get insights. So the ability to actually have the machine suggest to me some relationships between the data that I'm looking at, and I have no idea how to write queries myself in SQL. Essentially, the tool is doing that querying for me. And the next feature, which is absolute favourite, is the natural language. Being able to ask like you would in a conversational style, ask the tool for insights of the data set that I'm looking at. So really, no programming skills, no coding skills, very little database knowledge required.
Sounds right up my alley. Any parting words of wisdom for the audience, Pete? Any recommendations beyond what's been discussed?
Spin up a trial, get your principals using the tool, have them look at Power BI, get your teachers looking at the tool as well. It's not about only certain individuals. I guess the sooner the school adopts a data approach, mindset, and looking at insights, the faster we can start supporting our students and really helping them succeed and achieve the potential.
Great, thank you so much, Pete. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Nat.